Good morning, everyone. Welcome to forms class. Today, we got two forms. We're going over the 22 LA, which is the land and acreage addendum. And then we're doing the 22 MH, the manufactured home addendum. So we're gonna jump right to it. Let me share my screen. Okay, you guys can see everything. All right, so land and acreage addendum. Uh-oh, why is that not the manual? Let me open it up again. Hold on. All right, so land and acreage addendum to purchase sale agreement. General comments, use. This addendum may be attached to a purchase and sale agreement when the parties wish that the transaction be subject to certain contingencies listed in the addendum. Generally, this addendum should be used for a transaction involving a large parcel or parcels of property. So first things first is, this is obviously not going to be used for, unless it's a place that has like huge property and the house is a tear down, like a complete, scrape, that type of situation, then you may still want to use it. Buyer acknowledgements. The buyer acknowledgements listed on page 1 provide information to buyer regarding the contingencies in the addendum. There's a lot of obviously acknowledgements in here. And something very, very unique to the form, which there is only a couple forms in our entire library that actually has an attorney review right into the addendum. Very rare. Do you remember that? Nope. Jim, you use this one at all?
I just, somebody just used one of my lots, but I did not, I kind of scanned it over, so I didn't see that, so. But yeah, I see it now, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times brokers forget about, these forms exist, there's an old school saying that we continue to use and say is that, typically there's a form for that. Like whatever you're trying to find, whatever you're trying to do, more than likely it is actually in the Northwest MLS, right? I mean, look at all the forms, in forms class, this is what we do. We go through all of these to kind of like just grind through all of the ones that we can for all the different manuals to get all of the detailed information, because there's just so much, right? I mean, this is a complex business. That's another reason why you guys are worth what you charge, for your representation for your clients, is that it's a lot to do. I mean, seriously, there's a lot of forms. So each week we will continue down this journey and we're gonna dive in deeper. All right, so attorney review. Agency law requires that you advise your client to seek expert advice on matters relating to the transaction that are beyond your expertise. If the provisions of this addendum are beyond your expertise, you should refer your client to an attorney. So, attorney review.
Three,
Is it in the 3?
yeah, okay.
There it is. So there is an attorney review box in there. Don't forget, check boxes. What does it mean if the checkbox is not marked? Yeah, it's not even there. It's as if the language is not even on the form. So that's why it's critically important that checkboxes are not missed. And in fact, that's, if you read like the beginning manuals, that's what they say that most issues come from, is brokers when they're filling in the contracts for their client, missing a checkbox, missing a blank. Those are usually the issues that end up, biting them. So if it's not marked, none of this is even on the form.
This is almost more, this form is probably used a lot more on the side of the state farming. Looking at accessories.
You might think that, but let's, you know, as we dive in deeper, you're gonna see all the different things that this form is about. All right, let's see. Assistance in filling in the blanks, obviously the date of the purchase and sale agreement, same as the day you write it, buyer name, seller name, property, insert the property address as on the purchase and sale agreement. This is the big part, it's contingencies. Check the box for each contingency that applies. In doing so, select whether buyer or seller is required to pay for the work associated with each contingency. Note that the party responsible for paying for the work to be performed is also responsible for timely ordering the work. So as we get to 2C, all the contingencies, we have general, contingency periods, and then contingency. So let's see, Karen, you want to read A?
A, general contingency provisions. This agreement is conditioned on the applicable contingencies below. The work to be performed shall be timely ordered by the party responsible for payment, except for the feasible study, if applicable, and shall be performed by qualified professionals. If seller is responsible for ordering the work and fails to timely do so, seller will be in breach of the agreement.
All right, Mariah, want to do B?
Contingency periods. The applicable contingency period shall commence on mutual acceptance of the agreement. If buyer gives notice of disapproval and termination of the agreement within the applicable contingency period, the earnest money shall be refunded to buyer. If buyer fails to give timely notice within the applicable contingency period, then the respective contingency shall be deemed waived.
Yep, so you missed your timelines, you missed your dates and your deadline, it's waived. Buyer's gonna have to buy it as is. That's typically if you're representing a client and if that gets missed and it's your fault, you pretty much that's an easy, lawsuit to win. It really is. I mean, these things are rare, but they do happen. Contingencies, Jonathan, want to do C?
Yeah,
Move it up. See it
items
there.
touched below are to be paid by the buyer or the seller as indicated below and are contingencies to the agreement. Notwithstanding the payment allocations provided by the parent, here an agreement fails to close as a consequence of seller breach, the cost of the following shall be borne by the seller. Shall be, I can't read that.
Born, yeah, it's like born by the sun.
Born.
So now we can really start seeing all these different contingencies. So, and who is gonna be paid, who's paying for it? So the first one is survey, right? Completion of a survey to verify information regarding the property as listed in 1B, with results of the survey to be satisfactory to buyer and buyer's sole discretion. Seller shall provide any prior surveys of the property to buyer if available. So you guys know how much it costs for a survey? Well, what's a lot? Give me $1.
Probably about $3,000.
We've got
Right.
for $7
More
grand for a property out on the peninsula,
And how big was the property?
3 acres.
Yeah,
And how
that
much was
sounds, that's,
$7,000.
Usually, yeah, for us, it's a lot. I mean, I only had, in 40 years, I've only had one survey. People in Pennsylvania, they do it all the time. But they charged at that time, like in the 80s, about $1,500 per side.
yeah, it's expensive. So hello, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we want to buy your property. Here, we want you, oh, you don't have a survey? I want you to pay for the survey. How many sellers are usually going to do that? Why? Not only the cost, because that's the obvious one. 3 acres, she'll put us $7,000.
Well, it also becomes a disclosure issue. Is if there's something going on the property lines that they did not know of, it could be a major, much more expensive than the survey.
Encroachments, issues, all sorts of things can come up. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother thing. Like if you're representing a seller and they're selling some land and you receive this addendum and they're asking you, hey, they want you to pay for a survey. You need to be able to explain this, not just like, oh, great, we got a really good deal. Oh, they only want us to, pay for a survey. And they got so many days of contingency. How long does a survey take? How long ago did you guys do one?
We
Reset.
looked into doing one,
Oh.
and they decided not to go. ahead with it. So
Why did you guys decide not to? Just,
the buyers decided not to.
ah,
They were looking at doing
uh-huh.
for a discrepancy in the property line.
Mm,
So
Yep.
I don't know how long it would take.
Jim, how long do you remember how long it took for?
Well, back then it took, it was a matter of probably about within a week, but that was that.
Yeah,
What I've heard now, it's a lot longer. I mean, they're busy.
yeah. You probably want at least, and you better check with someone first. If you're working with a buyer and you know that they want a survey, regardless of who's paying for it, you should have someone lined up. Definitely understand the timeline of how long it will take them to go get it done, and more importantly, to actually finish and give the actual survey, have it finished and the paperwork completed.
Probably.
You want at least 14 days, I would say. Well, maybe. Just depends. Yeah, closing with land, a lot of times it's not gonna be a 30-day close usually, because you need timelines to figure things out. Perk tests. So here's another one. Perk or similar tests conducted by a qualified professional indicating that the property is suitable for installation of a conventional septic system and drain field. If the sale fails to close, the party who paid for the perk test shall fill in holes at their expense within 2 weeks of the date the transaction is terminated. Earnest money shall not be refunded to buyer until perk holes are filled in, if this is buyer's responsibility.
I love that.
I love that too.
That's the first time I've noticed this. Or they don't use this form, and they don't.
Bingo. Bingo. You're representing a seller and they got vacant land. This form doesn't come into play a lot of, like I said, you think like, oh, okay, they're not gonna, they're gonna have a feasibility study addendum, usually, right? Which that is okay to still have, but these literally are gonna describe exactly what the client can do, and these are contingencies. They're separate contingencies. So as a seller, I really like this because the other one says, 35 inspection, right? You can't do perk tests and stuff with just a 35 inspection. But the 35F, which we'll have in a few weeks,
35,
that's just the feasibility contingency addendum. So let's control F and go perk. Oh, doesn't even say the word perk, does it? So what does that mean to your seller's land? Could they end up all of a sudden deal falling through and there could be 20 giant holes dug in their property and left for the seller to take care of?
liability.
And like, oh yeah, someone falls in, there's water in the bottom. Or they're full of water. I've seen that.
Hot tub swimming pool.
Yeah, totally full of water. You're not gonna get a septic system on that property. So it's things like that, that just getting the right form can completely change your protection to your client. All right, let's continue. Perk tests, you know what? I don't even know how much perk tests are anymore. It's been quite a while. If you have a buyer who's literally like, I want to buy land and build, and and you can ask them, well, how many times have you done this? 0. Yeah, okay. Who's going to do your feasibility study for you? Because you guys are definitely not doing that. You can't do any inspections, right? There's a place called lotlauncher.com. You can go to those guys. They do complete feasibility studies for you.
They'll do a pre for a lot less.
Yep, they'll do pre up front, so during, like, before you close on it, or they can even do the full in July if you want it. So they do a la carte, but it's like a building lotlauncher.com. Go there, they do, they do a bunch of Washington, they're in other areas too.
We have a resource page here, because those kind of things like who does survey or.
We don't, and the reason we don't is because if we did, we would have to police it and keep going through and checking to make sure people are licensed and bonded, and so we can't do it, we don't got the time. But if you are going to refer somebody, do make sure they're licensed and bonded, for anything. Same thing goes for home inspectors, right? If you're giving someone like a referral, I would use that inspector, there's a form for that. There's an inspector referral addendum. And that's just for the client, and you can do your top 3 favorite home inspectors on there with their information. And then it says, what's the relationship to, for you, you could say they've done inspections for your clients in the past. That's all you got to say. And it puts another shield of protection in front of you. It's always best to give 3, too. But using that addendum, that's just a really good shield. All right, on-site sewage system. Let's see. The on-site sewage system, OSS, shall be inspected, and if the inspector determines necessary, pumped by qualified professionals, with result of the inspection to be satisfactory to buyer and buyer's sole discretion. If seller had the OSS inspected within 12 months, if not filled in, of mutual acceptance, and seller provides buyer with written evidence thereof, including an inspection report, there shall be no obligation to inspect and pump the OSS unless otherwise required by buyer's lender. So there's a key little thing in here, right? If VA financing and use, buyer's lender may require certification of the OSS. If seller has not already conducted an inspection, buyer shall have the right to observe the inspection. The OSS inspection shall or shall not include a purge test to determine if the OSS is functioning properly. Seller shall deliver to buyer the maintenance records, if available, all of OSS serving the property within 10 days, if not filled in, of mutual acceptance. So
This seems redundant. Because the septic inspection per county seems like it's much more. I'm just kind of wondering, if you had a property with a septic system on it, why would you use this and not?
well, because this is pretty much the same thing as the septic addendums, but it's just crunched together all in one addendum.
Well, the only distinction I see.
There's no other.
Shall or shall not purge.
Yeah, that's the part that's different.
Right, and I think.
But why would they do that?
Because they don't, the septic system might be bad.
Yeah, it might be bad. Yeah. But sometimes these properties, like I said, there could be an existing old home on it. That's a tear down or an old manufactured home.
But isn't it King and Pierce County, aren't they required to use in this language, purge the septic system, make sure it's good?
Yeah, you're gonna want to mark this shall. So who's responsible for paying for that? This one I would definitely say is seller's responsible. Cause that's a pretty common thing that if it's a septic system.
Suddenly now, that's the advantage of using this one, it's paid by the buyer.
You could, yeah, exactly. That's true.
Yeah, historically.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes you're got a hot vacant land, piece of vacant land that everyone wants, and they're like, yeah, I'll do the own septic stuff myself. But at least they've got a contingency to terminate if it is bad, and it's gonna cost them a ton of money. Or maybe connecting to the sewer might be better if they can do so. Water quality, this is obviously an important one. Water quality and or purity tests showing water meets the approval standards, the Department of Ecology, and the standards of the governing county. Water quality tests to be performed by a qualified professional. Water quality and or purity tests shall or shall not be submitted to a private lab for further evaluation. Definitely sending it to a lab is a good choice if you're testing water, especially if it's a well. When it's a well, that's something that that needs to happen. Could be pretty costly if they have to really do everything. Water quantity test, 4-hour draw down test or other tests selected by buyer showing a sustained flow of a GPM. what is a GPM? I don't remember. See if our friend, Google remembers.
GPM.
Yeah, is it great?
Gallons per minute?
Gallon per minute?
I think so.
Oh, let me. Machine, water. Yep, gallons per
Oh,
minute.
way to go.
Good one, Shilpa. So if you need to do that test, then that would be something that, you know, definitely, water's an important thing, especially when you start getting in these outlined areas. Definitely an important thing. We've had issues where sometimes, you know, counties are like, this land, this is like only gonna be timber. It's timberland, it's already designated as timber. There's no water rights to this property at all. Like you can't do nothing. So, you know, sometimes sellers like, oh, I'm gonna sell this, or they inherit it, and they're like, people don't really know what they've got. And they're like, yep, we wanna sell it, and then they get a listing broker who doesn't know anything about land, and then they list it, and they're like, yeah, come build your home, your dream home here. Oh, okay, by the way, yes, oh, you're gonna have to pay all the back taxes for what, is that 9 years? It could be a ton of money. Cause they get taxed differently based on that, the land use code. So if it's in timberland, you know, then it's not gonna be used as residential, and so they're getting a huge discount on their taxes. They will go back 9 years to what the tax would have been if it was residential and assess that, whatever they assess it at. So it's not cheap. Changing that designation, if you want to, and the worst thing too, you gotta file paperwork to continue the same designation. And that gets missed. So you working with a buyer, all of a sudden it's like, oh, you know, it's agricultural land, or it's timberland, or it's, you know, there could be a couple other like things that like, if you see it's designated and the tax is different, like if you look at the taxes, you're like, wow, this 15 acres, the taxes are cheap. Like, huh, that's really low. Especially per counties that, you know, the counties that typically charging so much. That's kind of, that's your indicator, like, uh-oh, something's up. So check that title report. What is the land, you know, designated at? Because that could be a ton of cost that your client's gonna have to take on. And here it is, timber. So timber cruise conducted by a qualified forest products expert at buyer's choice, with results of the cruise to be satisfactory to buyer and buyer's sole discretion. I mean, if it's an important thing for them, we have definitely have people buying properties for timber. We've had timber companies reach out to, you know, homeowners who own a bunch of land, and they say, yep, you've got a ton of timber on here. You know, we'd love to buy it. You know, it happens. It's rare. That one's rare, but it does happen. All right, let's jump to number 7. We got additional provisions. Janelle, you want to read 7?
Had it on the one
Yeah.
line, so I have it on here. Okay.
Oh,
Number 7?
yep.
Okay, check the box for each additional provision that applies and fill in the relevant information for the applicable paragraphs. Please note that if the feasibility study box is checked, that paragraph supersedes and replaces the feasibility contingency in Form 25, vacant land purchase and sale agreement.
Yeah, so you're gonna want that anyway. The vacant land Form 25. Oops, hold on. So their feasibility contingency, here's the line, right? So, oh, sorry, right here, number 15. Right? And there's 6 different, move our little window here. So here is the feasibility for vacant land. All right, So it's gonna supersede V in Form 25. Get down to it. So, section 3, this is gonna supersede it. So if this box is checked, the paragraph supersedes and replaces the feasibility contingency set forth in specific term 15 and general term V of Form 25. Completion of the feasibility study and determination in buyer's sole discretion that the property and any matters affecting the property, including without limitation, the condition of any improvements to the property, the condition and capacity of irrigation pumps, system and wells, adequacy of water rights to the property, the licensure of wells permitted or certificated water rights for the property, the location and zone of any critical area on the property, the number and location of approved road approaches from public roads, and the presence of recorded access easements to the property are suitable for buyers' intended uses, and that it is feasible and advantageous for a buyer to acquire the property in accordance with the agreement. In performing any investigations, buyer shall not interfere with any existing tenants' operations on the property. This feasibility study contingency shall conclusively be deemed waived unless within 20 days, if not filled in, after mutual acceptance, buyer gives notice disapproving the feasibility study. If buyer timely disapproves the feasibility study and terminates the agreement, the earnest money shall be refunded to the buyer. So this is pretty similar to the 35F. But the one thing that's different between this and the 35F is that it does not have the checkbox to automatically terminate if the buyer doesn't give notice on time. So that's one thing that the 35F does that this one does not. So if you're going to use the 22LA, right, the form we're working on right now, if you're gonna use this, you do not have the protection of that auto termination if you don't give your notice time, on time. So it's one of those kind of fail safes that you can add in your agreement. I think that if you're one of those people like, I don't want to miss this timeline and make the buyer have to buy this place no matter what, you may want to skip number 3, this feasibility study on the 22LA, and actually just use your 35F. Because then remember, if it's not marked, it's as if it's not even on the form. And then you could use that feasibility study addendum, mark that box at the bottom, that in the event buyer does not give the timely notice, the deal automatically terminates and buyer gets a return of their full earnest money. So it's one of those kind of like, ooh, this is one of those ones you just do not want to miss your timeline. So speaking of timelines, how are you guys how are you guys getting reminders for these? This is some, they're really important days. What do? How do you handle it? Do you just write it down on a sticky note? What are you doing? What do you guys do?
I do write it on a list and then I put it in the calendar on my phone and.
Yeah. So what type of reminder, like how much, if your deadline is, let's say, I don't know, Friday, May 10th, that's your deadline. Are you reminding yourself like on that same day? Like how much time are you giving yourself for these reminders for all the contingencies?
At least a couple, well, depending on what it is, I guess, but like.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know what I do a couple days to do for the time, like say it's an inspection, it's like, well, let's book it right away, schedule it right away, and then you have time to think about it, depending on how many days you put in there.
Yeah.
Do the 10 days or the 5 days or.
How many people use a transaction coordinator? In here? Nobody, no. So everyone's doing their own deal. Okay, so. Honestly, like the very best way of what you should be doing, as soon as you get mutual acceptance. You should actually get that deal, get in front of that deal, take your phone out and open up your calendar. And then look at the full month, right? So you can see the full month of where you are. What the first thing you gotta do is write like, when is mutual? Mutual acceptance is like the day when you've got it received and you got every line is initialed and signed. There's, no change, you've got your deal. Once you have that date, all timelines begin commencing day. What does that mean? Because that's what it says in our contracts, commencing day. You guys know? Zoom people, anybody? Bueller? That means the following day, the next day is your first day. That's when you start counting. Okay, computation of time. It's one of the things that brokers struggle with all the time. I don't get it as often because we've really driven it pretty hard in our forms classes and in our training sessions about how does computation of time work. The easiest way to remember it is that any timeline of 5 days or less, weekends and holidays do not count. So if you have a 5-day home inspection contingency and you got mutual acceptance today's the 20th, right? We have just 5 days. Actually, let me bring this up on the screen to make it a little bit easier for everybody.
But isn't part of that when it starts is if also you have to have received it?
Oh yeah, no, that's what I said. Like you got receipt. This is probably not the best. Hold on. Damn Amazon. They get everything. Like, come on. All right, so today is the 20th, right? Today we got mutual, 5 days or less. Weekends and holidays do not count, so they're business days only. So 5 days, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the 27th by 9 p.m. 9 p.m. is the deadline. If you sent it at 9 p.m., you're late. It's done. It's dead at 9 p.m. So writing down that contingency, right? You need to go through your entire contract. What is the very, very first contingency, or what's the first item that's got a timeline that has to happen? You don't say, because I know you don't. What's the very first thing that will happen upon mutual acceptance? Earnest money deposit. That has to happen by a deadline. How many days is that? Trick question. How many days do you have to deposit it? Is it?
You get to set it.
Well,
You get to set it.
You get to set it. You guys, it's you write it and choose it. You get to choose when it's,
better, right?
huh?
Used to be just two.
Well, it used to be defaulted to 2, and then in the event it's handed to a broker, it's 3. And there was so much confusion in that, and people were like, oh, it was a mess. You choose the timeline. The very, very best timeline you can put is 3 days. And the reason being is because wiring funds takes time. Each side of the wire has cutoff times to send it and cutoff times to receive it. As soon as a buyer misses their cutoff time, they're in breach of the agreement, and our seller can terminate. Seller can terminate on the buyer right away. They'll sell to somebody else just because it's late.
What is there that, there's something, I can't remember what it is, Cause like I said, generally it's 5 days or however, don't count weekends, but there's something that, the timeline that, where you can count weekends.
We're gonna get to it.
Okay.
Here we go. So here's the first, okay, so you get mutual on a deal. You're gonna review the whole deal, look at every timeline that you need a reminder for. That is when you're gonna go to your Outlook and put a reminder. And I would definitely do it by the day before. Make sure it's a 1-day reminder for that event. So then no matter what, you're getting the reminder for the day before and you're like, hey, tomorrow's the deadline. I have to have it done before 9 PM. Like that is it. So timelines don't repeat, it's over. Okay, when you do that for all of your contingencies and you write them all out, you do that for every one of those reminders. And you name like maybe the buyer, or seller, you're representing the seller, you should have these timelines too. They're important to you. Also, you need to be able to notify your seller what's going on. Like they didn't deposit the earnest money and it wasn't done on time. You're not, you're the listing broker and you're not gonna go call your seller and say, hey, they're late. What do you want to do? Hey, you remember we had those other buyers that were asking to, submit another offer? But they want to, go pay higher than this buyer on the deal we accepted. You can bounce those people. One mistake like that can cost the entire deal. Okay, so you do that. The next thing for computation of time is that if it is greater than 5, so if you're 6 days and above, if you're at a 6 and above, weekends and holidays count, but they can't land on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday. That's the pieces that a lot of people forget. So let's say we have mutual today. Let's see, we'll keep it as today for mutual, and we have 10. So we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Lands on Saturday. So now we gotta go to April.
Is Good Friday a holiday, or is that only?
Only, yeah.
For Catholic.
Cause next Friday is
Yep.
Friday.
Yeah, so now we gotta jump into April, right? And it would actually be the 1st. Yeah, so that's the part of computation of time that really, as long as you understand those rules, you will completely understand, everything else where those timelines go. But so critical. Huh?
If it's 6 days.
6 and above.
6 and above.
6 and above. 5 and below, weekends and holidays do not count. 6 and above, they count, but you can't land on a Saturday, Sunday, or legal holiday.
So even for an inspection, contingency, it can't land on.
All timelines,
Really? Okay, I didn't.
all timelines.
Closing date, but,
Yeah,
okay, interesting, okay.
So your 3 days response inspection, you actually could have 5 days.
yeah, or more if there's a holiday in there somewhere.
Right, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so when you're writing deals, you should be looking at a calendar.
Yeah.
Definitely. You're like, okay, I think we'll get mutual by tomorrow. You say from your communications with the other party, you should be able to kind of figure out the timelines and like, okay, I know we'll get I really strong feeling we'll get mutual tomorrow. If that's the case, our timelines will begin the following day, which is a Friday. We only had a 3-day inspection. So now we got Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, it's not just, and you got the weekend too. So you end up getting 5 days for your only 3. So same thing for your deposits and stuff like that. You really gotta pay attention to just where you're at on the day, what are the holidays. I always send out a reminder for you guys on coming up, what's the holiday that's recognized that's gonna mess up your computation of time. So just pay attention to those emails. All right. I know that was a sidebar, but we don't really have that down. A lot of this other stuff won't make sense. All right, irrigation and water, seller represents that there are so many shares of whatever irrigation, frost water rights. applicable to the property, all of which will be transferred to buyer at closing. The parties acknowledge that water rights do not automatically transfer with title to the property, and the parties should consult with an attorney to facilitate the transfer of any water rights. If there's any water rights at all, definitely there should be an attorney, you know, have the title attorney look at stuff and have them help. But that they will say, yeah, you're gonna want an attorney to handle the transfer of these rights. Cause you guys can't do it. Let's see, Shilpa, you wanna do assignment and an assumption? Maybe?
Yeah, I'm here. Assignment and assumption. At closing, the seller will assign, transfer, and convey all of its right, title, and interest into under any lease of the property, and will represent and warrant the buyer that as of the closing date, there are no defaults under the leases and no condition exists or event has occurred or failed to occur that with or without notice and the passage of time could ripen into such default. At closing, buyers will agree to defend, indemnify, and hold the seller harmless from and against any obligation under the leases to the extent delegated to and assumed by the buyer hereunder. Okay, what was that?
I know that one's a mouthful for sure. A
Well,
lot
wow.
of the attorney jargon. Yeah, if there's any assignments and assumptions that the seller will have to transfer and convey all those rights. That one's definitely pretty important, you know, especially if there's, you know, tenants in there, those types of things. You may want to use that other form we did, go over just a couple weeks ago. What was it? What is it? We just did it. What is it? 22L. Duh, it was last week. Or last form class, because we didn't have it last week. That's what it was. 2 weeks ago. All right. Attorney review, we talked about that. Accessories, the indicated accessories are items included in addition to those stated in specific term 5 of the agreement. There's portable buildings, sheds and other outbuildings, game feeders, livestock feeders and trows, irrigation equipment, fuel tanks, submersible pumps, pressure tanks, corrals and pens, gates and fences, chutes, or other. The value assigned to the personal property included in the sale shall be dollar amount. Seller warrants title to, but not the condition of the personal property, and shall convey it by bill of sale. So if the land has pieces of the, you know, farm equipment and all these types of things that they know that is worth money, they can actually put this in the contract, but this is not the bill of sale. I think I remember someone doing that, like they go like, oh, we filled it in and that's what the buyer's gonna pay directly to the seller. But there was no bill of sale for the items. So this says that you're gonna do a bill of sale. What's a bill of sale? Yeah, it's like just a personal receipt. Literally, you can write out on a napkin. It doesn't really matter as long as it's the seller who owns the personal items. They list all the items. They list on how much all the items cost each, and then a total dollar amount of what the value is that the buyer's going to pay. Rare occasion. These are sort of rare ones, but they have come up. CRP program, buyer must assume all conservation reserve programs. So wetland restoration program or similar program contracts and agree to continue them through the expiration date of each such contract. All documentation for the assumption shall be completed prior to the closing date and must be approved by the USDA or applicable government agency prior to closing. Any applicable program payment shall be prorated as of closing. Seller shall deliver to buyer all documents related to such programs within 10 days if not filled in after mutual acceptance. This agreement is conditioned on buyer's approval of the program documents. This contingency shall be deemed waived unless buyer gives notice of disapproval within 5 days if not filled in after receipt of the program documents. If buyer gives timely notice of disapproval, the agreement shall terminate and the earnest money shall be refunded to the buyer. Okay, so once in a while, these land, sometimes people have wetland studies and they're doing all these programs and they're paying payments for these, and because sometimes they last for 8 months or 12 months, or they have to keep up with the program paying the payments, and they have to keep, they get all the documentation of what's going on, but then they get the benefit at the end of usually the program. If it's a wetland study, which that's the most common one I can think of, they will issue what they find. They'll give you the certificate and say, yep, this area is considered wet, this area is not. They'll kind of like guarantee and maybe widen that building envelope a little bit for that lot. It's hard to say until that study is completed, but this gives the chance for that program to be kind of transferred. All right. Crops, land lease, review, contingency, seller shall make available to buyer as soon as practical, but no later than 10 days after mutual acceptance. All documents in seller's possession or control relating to any crop or land lease for the property. So buyer shall determine at buyer's full discretion, same type of thing. It's almost the same language here repeated again, but just for crop instead of just, of what we just read. Document review period. If this box is checked, seller shall deliver to buyer a copy of the following documents within 20 days of mutual acceptance. Sometimes, these large pieces of land might have stuff for agricultural, they might be farming, and so they'll have a lot of documentation and paperwork that pertains to the farmland. And if the clients wants to continue running that farm or doing anything else, it's going to be really important for them to get that type of documentation from the seller. If they get stuff periodically from the government, it could be really important. What if they're telling the farmer like, oh, you can't grow this here anymore or something? I don't know. I mean, there could be changes for stuff, and you don't want a client buying land and then all of a sudden find out there's issue with that. So normally people who are involved in that type of, business, they usually know what's needed, and they may ask you, to have the seller give this document, whatever it may be, so that they have a contingency to review it. So it's just going to be one of those part of your consultation with the buyer about what items they may need for a specific purchase of this type of property, if they're experienced. If they're not experienced at all, and you're not experienced at all, that's a red flag. I would say, maybe you don't take that client on. Maybe you refer them, or maybe you bring in someone who has the experience. I would say come to us. We can reach out to try to find someone, who does have the experience to do with that. Because like I said, if that person doesn't know, you don't know, you don't ask for something, then they close on this thing. And then they're like, I can't do what I wanted to do with this thing, right? Who are they going to look at? You. They're gonna look at you. All right. Very last but not least is the tax designation. We need to read this one. Let's see. Gavin, can you unmute? And we're gonna go ahead and read. Ooh, go back up.
Hopped in my car.
Oh, you're driving?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Well, all right. So if applicable, check the appropriate boxes related to the tax classification of the property. Okay, classification of property. Seller represents that the property is classified as. So here's open space, farm and agricultural, or timberland under chapter 84.34 of the revised code of Washington State. So if any of these designations, if the property is currently under these, and you really gotta understand, like, is it gonna be a continuation? The notice of classification continuation. In order to retain the classification, the buyer's gonna have to execute a notice of classification continuance at or before the time of closing. I will tell you right now, you better do it before you close. You have to have it all kind of like lined up, filled in, ready to go. Make sure the client's like doing the proper communication with that county or city or whoever is governing over the taxes for those continuations, okay? For the classification. If you're converting it at all, if you're going from open space to farm, or you're going from, from open space to timberland, or any of those ones, there could be different class, or from the class, adjustment, it could cost some more taxes. You cannot warrant those at all. You're gonna have to have the buyer go and get the information directly. You can't be the person that go, oh, I'll go find out for you. I know you guys want to be helpers, help your client and, to provide the information. But when it comes to classifications of the property and continuances or them changing it, they got to be able to get the information direct. You can't really be the person that gives that, provides that, or warrants that. Because if you do, guaranteed you will be responsible in the event that they get hit with those taxes. Because I seriously have heard of a client literally closing on a deal and like 90 or 60 days later or whatever it was, they get a letter like, here you go, here's your tax bill for 90 something thousand dollars because you didn't file the paperwork. Oh, but we're gonna keep it as open space. Doesn't matter, you didn't file it. Not good, definitely not good. All right, everyone signs it, initials, right? All good. We are done with land and acreage addendum. Any questions? I know it's a lot, but if you're dealing with any vacant land or any property that's got a lot of land on it, this could come into play. All right, manufactured home addendum. Use. Title elimination. A manufactured home or mobile home can either be real property or personal property. In order for a manufactured home to be real property, it must be 1, affixed to the land, 2, the certificate of ownership or title must be eliminated. An example, the title to the manufactured home as personal property must be eliminated in accordance with Washington law. Form 22MH should be used as an addendum to the purchase and sale agreement for those transactions where a manufactured home is currently personal property, but the title will be eliminated prior to closing. See Legal Bulletin 195 for more information. So, how do you know if the property's is it personal property or real property? How do you guys know? You're selling a house. You see it's a manufactured home. How are you gonna know?
The wheel's still on or?
That's what I'm saying, wheels.
Well, it's actually,
Legal description is where you go. You
So that would-
have to check up the title to that.
What's the first indicator you know for sure, without a doubt, you know 100% it's gonna be personal property? When you see this manufactured home, where is it sitting? Where,
Well,
what?
if it's not in a trailer park.
that's in a park.
It's in a park. Thank you. If it's in a park, it's personal property. What do we drive in every day?
The cars.
What do those have? Titles.
Titles.
You got a title to that,
Registrations.
registration to the car. It's personal property.
But there is a park that off of 116th, yeah.
Condominium ones.
Well,
Right.
this is one that basically it's been I can't remember the name, it's been so long. But they're actually attached, every manufactured home is attached to the land. It's a manufactured home park, right? that's been, it's built about, I want to say late eighties, early eighties. I mean, it's not the one on 156 in King.
Yeah, I mean,
There's one that's actually-
yeah, I don't know. I've seen some weird ones where they have condominiumized
Right.
the condos and you own it.
That's the one.
I've seen that.
That's the one on 156 in King.
Mhm,
It's built as, the manufactured homes,
mhm.
but it's built as condominiums. As to why they did it, I don't know.
Well, the zoning allowed it, I guess. I mean, that's
Well, the lots are
literally how
all
they do
about
it.
5,000 They're good sized lots.
Yeah,
The one in, it's about 200th and 116th. I thought it started with something like that, I remember it.
huh.
Yeah, but it's been around for.
Well, either way, if it's in a park more than, 99.9% of the time, it's going to be personal property. And right away, that's gonna tell you differences, if, what type of a purchase and sale agreement you're going to be using. So we got. If there's a manufactured home. And it's on its own land, the land is owned by the same, that they're owned, the manufactured home is owned and by the same seller on that land, and they own that land. Right? You're gonna use what type of purchase and sale agreement?
Well, hopefully you'll be able to use a residential, but purchase and sale.
No, the 21 something, manufactured home.
So the way we do forms class. Gonna move this around here. I'm gonna get to 1. So here's manufactured home purchase sale agreement, Form 23 is on leased land,
Oh,
That's in the park.
right? That's on a park.
okay.
They got manufactured home addendum, manufactured home listing input. Manufactured home unlisted input. But those are gonna be for in a park. You're using just a Form 21.
But that actually brings up the question though,
Mhm.
because sometimes you'll run across those. And, and then you find there's no title elimination.
I know, well, that's why we're gonna get into this addendum.
Yeah.
I ran into one, I showed at a house and it happened to my first transaction.
Mhm.
It was a manufactured home on a private land
Yeah.
and it was an FHA loan, right?
Uh-huh.
But we went into the title and they found the listing agent was there for open house and we went and showed it. And then they had found out that day, because I had an offer on a FHA loan,
Uh-huh.
that they couldn't approve it because the manufacturer home was
Moved
moved
twice.
already.
Yeah.
From one spot to another, so that eliminated a lot of the FHA loans.
Oh, yeah, it's
and
done.
Stuff like that, it had to be a conventional.
Can't get a loan then
And I was like, oh crap, that's,
on a manufacturer, yeah, you won't be able to use a government loan at all, for sure.
that's what I.
Even the convention ones, those are
Yeah,
hard.
those were hard, yeah.
Really hard to find.
Yeah, because this guy was, the one that had the offer was an I-10 loan, and that got eliminated as well.
No,
So it was all, with the, that's what I found out, if it's been moved, even though it's on private land, it eliminates a lot of these.
Yep.
There's so many bugaboos with the manufactured home, it's on its own property. Are the tags visible?
oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff into this, and I mean, we have people run into this all the time. Okay, so B, use personal property. Form 22MH may also be used an addendum to purchase and sale agreement where the manufactured home will be transferred as personal property pursuant to Washington Administrative Code, Section 308, 56A, 525. So this is filling in the blanks. Following numbers refer to the numbers on the sample in the form and manual. We got the date of the agreement, buyer's name, seller's name, property, insert the property address, manufacturer. So first things first, that's definitely different, is the property description is who's the manufacturer, what's the VIN number of the manufactured home, and the year built. So we can find in Matrix, let's do a search. And we're gonna go general. And we want active. And we want subtype is manufactured home. And let's just see around
These are
here.
manufactured homes and parts, is what we're looking at for.
Hold on a second, I wanna see if it's going to the. 10. Cause this is subtype. So yeah, these are gonna be all the parks, right? So here's park. Park. Always space rent. A lot of these are 55 and over communities. So you're gonna see lots of different items. Okay? But if you're trying to find the ones to the land, get back to our criteria. We're gonna go residential. And then you need to add in your additional fields to do the style code. The style code is what type of home? And there's 3 in Kent. We shouldn't see space number or anything like that. So here's one. Okay. Clicking on the tax ID number is a great indicator, right? For a realist will come up from the listing. Okay, we'll be able to take a look and then see Swanson Court mobile home plat block, lot 54. So you can also jump from this one to get to the King County tax. Okay, and then from here, click on property detail, and you should see properties mobile home. And it should tell you the actual. I don't see the, that's weird, because it should name the actual. That's weird, it doesn't show the actual name. Go back to see if it's Realist has it. That's weird though, because King County should definitely show it too.
This Swanson Court.
Yeah, but that's not the. That's not the manufacturer and
Oh.
the number.
Oh.
That's weird. I wonder if this is a, maybe this is a park. Maybe they listed it wrong. Oh, here's model. And the serial number, and it's Fleetwood, so it is in the listing. Swanson Court HOA, this could be one of those ones where it's like condominiumized. You'd have to probably look at the title.
What's the name? What's the address?
12243 Southeast 206th Street in Kent.
That's the one I was talking about.
That's what you're talking about?
Yeah, they basically, they're manufactured homes built on land.
Yeah,
I can't remember, I haven't been in complex years.
But it is a park, but built on land.
Yeah.
yeah,
they're
there's
actually-
something definitely unique on that one.
Yeah, that's the one, you won't find that probably, I can't even anywhere else in that. That one, I think it was, the park was built in the late 70s. Back when no one was around. But it's. Now I gotta pull myself with it, I'm curious.
Yeah. Okay.
Real property. I think they've always been attached. There's a part of it that is actually Most of them are.
What's the year for manufactured homes that are,
unfinanceable.
yeah? Somewhere around 76.
78.
Well, usually it's 78.
above.
But now they're almost going down to 76.
Yeah,
And that's something you'd have to, usually it's always traditionally back in
Yeah.
78.
yeah, 78 was kind of the year,
So
which a lot of
78
lenders will not, loan on below anything built before that. Okay, so here's another one. Let's take a look at the realist on this. Okay, so here's a more, yeah, this definitely like, look at the lot. Or for the, legal description and everything here. This is definitely like one of the ones that looks like a normal.
Park, everything.
No, this is vacant, just its own land, right?
Oh.
It's not in a park. Here's how much land it's on. Yeah, it's even got a meet and bounds in it, exactly. So, looks like last time they had a private party lender. You can always look at the mortgage history, that gives you good ideas of like, okay, this was a FHA, a government-backed loan on it, so you can always kind of like look at that in case. You know, your clients wanting to do the same type of financing, just jumping into Realist right from the listing, looking at that, like what other loan types do they have on there? Oh, there's VA on here? Ooh, okay, see what I mean? Like you can say it's already gone VA once, so, or FHA.
Ooh,
So, yep, that gives you some also good information and detailed in there. Wow, they listed for 1.279.
Swanson Court, yeah, sorry.
That's it.
Yeah, that's the name.
That was it.
That's the name of the manufacturer homes that are
Mm-hmm.
they're on their own lands. They're allowed to live out.
Well, Alright. so gotta have that in, should be on the listing for your property description for the manufactured home. Here's the part about title elimination or no title elimination. So let's get to 8. Oops. Okay. So title elimination, check the box and insert the number of days in which seller has to eliminate title. The provision relates to the fact that the manufactured home is currently personal property, but the parties agree it will become real property. An example, the title will be eliminated before closing. If seller is unable to timely eliminate title and gives notice thereof, the agreement will terminate. Or number 9 is going to be the no title elimination. Check the box if title will not be eliminated and the manufactured home will be transferred as personal property. You could have these items where, you know, it's vacant land, the manufactured home is there, and title's not eliminated, so it's still personal property, but you're gonna have to like probably talk to the lender and make sure that, hey, are you okay to loan on this? Like, manufactured home is still personal property. The title has not yet been eliminated, making it real property. When it is eliminated, they will have to do these certain things, like the foundation has to be correct, the right type, the tie downs, like all of the systems and components to the home has to be more converted to a more permanent home. So that's the thing that, you know, it costs a little bit of money for the seller to do, but it of course increases the value a little bit, you know, to be able to make that property no longer personal property.
What I found out is most people who own them don't know they have to basically any changes that to the L&I. That can be a huge.
Yep, and that's why this addendum is important, because it automatically has the number 3 here is the Department of Labor and Industries compliance inspection. Let's see, Karen, want to read this one?
3. Department of Labor and Industries Compliance Inspection. Buyer is advised that manufactured homes, including manufactured homes with title eliminated, are subject to regulation by the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries, L&I. L&I imposes special regulations on manufactured homes, including regulations pertaining to the permitting and inspection of alterations to manufactured homes. Accordingly, in addition to any inspection rights, a buyer may have pursuant to this agreement, including the inspection addendum NWMLS Form 35, buyers shall have blank days, 20 days if not filled in, for mutual acceptance to inspect the manufactured home on the property for the purposes of compliance with L&I regulations. On or before the end of this inspection period, buyer may give notice of any L&I compliance deficiencies. Upon buyer's notice, seller shall have blank 15 days if not filled in to give notice that seller has remedied the deficiencies, or this agreement shall terminate and the earnest money shall be refunded to buyer.
Well,
I know, it's a mouthful. What's different about the default days in this timeline compared to the Form 35 inspection addendum?
Longer.
Longer? Doubled. Ours, how many days is defaulted on our inspection addendum? 10.
5, 10.
It's defaulted to 10. This is 20 days. You're dealing with labor and industries, right? Compliance. I mean, it's the L&I. And they have some people that handle these inspections, you know. Yeah, it's kind of a racket. But they'll come out. Yeah, it really is. There's some of the same people have been doing this for frickin' 30 years, you know, and they're still out there doing the same things. Like I will tell you, the typical items that come up on these is anytime the homeowner builds a like a covered like step, you know, walkway, and they, you know, deck and stuff, and they connect it to the home.
Oh, no.
They have to be floating. And floating it's just they're standing on their own and the home is just butted right against it. They're not supposed to connect to it. But all the time, like in a house, when you're doing something to a house, they always connect it to a home. So you'll see contractors will literally like bridge it right off that roof. They'll screw it and mount it right into the manufactured home. And then that will get called out and they'll have to detach it. My last deal that I had with an estate, and I had warned the sellers, like, if we go because we had multiple offers and like there was a cash offer, it was less. But it's like, we won't have to deal with L&I. It's done. And yeah, we went through, I mean, 2 extensions with them. And the L&I forced them to literally cut the covered patio off of the home, remove it. And then they were like, well, it needs to be floating. And they're like, no, like the way that the contractor connected it, just like you would on a house,
Right.
rather than a manufactured home. They had to tear it off completely. They ended up having to just tear the whole thing off.
So let's say they do that, and then they decided to put the deck back on, well, how do they come back and check once the deal's sealed and done there now?
They won't come back after, but it's like one of those things. If you do it again and you're gonna go sell it again, it's gonna happen again. So you might as well build it, make it floating. So it should not be touching, or realistically, anytime you're piercing the membrane of that home, that's where they see it as issues. The construction of manufactured homes is so different. They use different material. It's a lot cheaper material. They use these, like, I'm not kidding, these little like square sticks that are, a lot of it, that's how they build the inside of it. Like if you see the shell like internally of the home, the way they're built, it's not the same type of construction as a house. It's just it's cheaply made. It's because they need to be able to be transported too.
Mhm.
So you need to be lighter, it needs to be cheaper, you know, and these things are coming in parts too. Typically right in half, right? If it's a double wide, you got 2 pieces. If it's a single wide, it's all 1 piece. The triple wide, you got 3 big pieces. So, and they just zip them all together. So the L&I thing is going to come in play. And the only time, you know, that I guess the only time I've seen it being okay is if like someone's owned it only for like a few years They bought it FHA. They have not changed this, they haven't changed it at all. You might be able to have lower timelines and stuff like that. I would get the documentation from the seller for who did all the work and have them call and hire the same person to do the same inspection. They're gonna go, some of them might even go, oh yeah, this is done. Yep, nothing's changed. Great, I'm done. Sign, finish. Cause they already have the stuff from the previous work. I actually helped someone do this just a few weeks ago. To pull up, go to the seller, where's your documentation? Oh, here it is. Have the buyer hire the same person, have them call the same person that came out and see if they'll do hire them for the same inspection. And then it was fast. That's the fastest I've ever seen it done, but you gotta be able to, look at the old paperwork. And then number 4, of course, conflicts between addendum and agreement. To the extent of any conflicts or inconsistencies between the agreement of this addendum, the terms of this addendum shall control. This language you will see from time to time on items that this is just telling you that whatever is on this agreement is going to supersede anything else. So if you wrote in something else about L&I inspections and, or anything else, this one's going to control if there's any conflicting terms. So this form shall rule. This isn't an initialed form. This is the full-on signatures. That's something that's definitely different between an addendum. All right, you guys, that is our forms for today. Be on the lookout next week as we continue this journey. Working to get better. Only way to have true transactional excellence is to be able to work on these forms continually over and over again, just like a professional athlete does when they're doing free throws, right? They want to get best at the basics. You guys, part of your value proposition to your clients is forms knowledge. I mean, it's really imperative, and it's getting more and more apparent on the transactions that we see from other cross agents that they don't know what they're doing. And it's costing them deals, it's costing them money because them doing things wrong. I mean, they may not even get a deal. So anyways, thank you guys for making it. We will see you on the next one.